Hello and welcome to the International Soccer Preview by Soccer Files Canada. That musical intro was Realism Stealth Warrior with a tune called Pseudo African Rednecks. I'm trying my hand at some editing to spice up the podcast here, using some African sounds, and later we will use hi-fi African drums by Cyberdread to transition through the sections. We recently finished a series previewing African Cup 2023 qualification, where we went group by group. That series featured a deep dive into the African Cup qualifying history of each team. That was not for the faint of heart. African soccer teams have the longest history of all world teams, not because they've been around the longest, but because their regional competition, the African Cup of Nations, takes place every 2 years and has done since 1957. So it was a pretty deep dive into their history, and we realized that that's not for everyone. Not everyone will be interested in that, but more people will be interested in what's happening currently in the African Cup. And it is interesting with the African Cup 2023 qualification already started, and some of the usual surprises that come with African soccer already on offer there. So if you're interested in the deep dives, please visit our website at soccerfiles.captivate.fm. That's soccerfiles with a PH in the middle and an S at the end. Or you can just type Soccer Files Canada into Google and we'll come up. For this series of 4 podcasts, we have compiled the last sections of these podcasts: the comparison of FIFA and ELO rankings, the head-to-head comparison, a discussion analyzing the prospects of each team, and our prediction of how the group is going to turn out. And then, kind of interestingly, it finishes with specific predictions on the 2 sets of games that have already been played, those games in June 2022, to see how each group is progressing so far. So we kind of kept ourselves in the dark in preparation for that. This podcast is number 3 of 4 in the series and deals with groups G, H, and I. That's Group G containing Mali, Congo, Gambia, and South Sudan. Group H containing Ivory Coast, Zambia, Comoros, and Lesotho. And Group I containing Congo DR, Democratic Republic of Congo, Gabon, Mauritania, and Sudan. Group G: Mali, Congo, Gambia, South Sudan. We're going to move on to part 3 of the podcast, which is kind of comparing them. So let's look at rankings. Mali is in pot 1, and they are 52nd in FIFA rankings and 60th in ELO rankings. So they've been pretty consistent. Actually, 60th is a bit higher than they usually are. They usually closer to 70, and their lowest ELO ranking has been 78th. FIFA, which is a bit reactionary and we don't trust as much, had them at 23rd in June 2013, but I can say fairly confidently they've never really been the 23rd strongest team in the world. But 52nd and 60th sounds about right. Congo is 98th in FIFA, but much lower in ELO at 135th. So they have been as high as 107 or in ELO rankings, and actually in 2007 they broke 100 and were 97th. So they've fallen down quite a bit recently in ELO rankings, but not so much in FIFA rankings where they're rated 98. This is very interesting compared to Gambia, because Gambia has it basically reversed. They have them as 125th in FIFA and 94th in ELO. So I'll just go over that again. Congo's FIFA ranking is 98th. Congo is much higher according to FIFA rankings, but Gambia is much higher according to the generally more reliable ELO rankings. And yes, South Sudan is in pot 4, way back in 161st in FIFA rankings and 179th in ELO rankings. So that's where it stands. So what we glean from that is that people are kind of unsure as to whether Congo or Gambia are stronger, and it probably comes down to whether Gambia's success in 2021 was a flash in the pan or a realistic reflection of their current strength. So we'll talk about that a bit later, but let's take a look at their head-to-head records before we do. So interestingly, Mali and Congo have an even record of 3 wins, 1 draw, and 3 ties, each of them having that record. The interesting thing is their 1972 meeting, where they met, unlikely, met in the final of the 1972 African Cup. So that was an unusual pairing, and Congo ended up winning it over Mali. Their most recent meeting was in 2010, where they exchanged home wins. But I would say by now, even though they have an even head-to-head record, Mali is the stronger team in recent times. Moving on to Mali and Ghana, same thing there. Mali's probably the stronger team, but they have an even record of 1 win, 1 draw, and 1 loss. So they met in 1984 and exchanged home wins. And we saw that they met in the 2021 African Cup group stage, where they tied 1-1. However, I would say that Mali is the stronger team despite that even record. Mali and South Sudan, Mali have a clear advantage there. They met in 2017 African Cup qualifying and in 2019 African Cup qualifying. Mali won all games, usually 3-0 there. Okay, and Congo, Congo and Gambia have never met. Congo and South Sudan have never met, and Gambia and South Sudan have never met either. So let's launch into a bit of a discussion about what we think is going to happen here. So Mali is once again blessed with an easy grouping that they should win. Congo is the pot 2 team, but as we saw, ELO rankings have them have Gambia far ahead of them. And this is a good place probably for South Sudan to improve their record against kind of inconsistent teams, but it's very unlikely that they'll challenge for 3rd place. So that's kind of an overview of what I think. And then in a bit more detail, Mali is really consistent against this type of opposition, and failing to reach the cup really seems out of the question here. In fact, even being challenged for 1st place seems unlikely. Their rankings are far above the others, and despite their even head-to-head records with Congo and Gambia, I think they're far the superior team. We saw that Congo beat them in the final of the 1972 African Cup, but which was a very unlikely pairing, I must say. But I don't think it bears much on the predictions here. It adds a bit of spice, but it's not of predictive value. Otherwise, the thing that is of predictive value in the head-to-heads is teams generally winning at home. Mali did earn a tie in Congo, but with Gambia and with Congo, it's home wins and struggling on the road. So we can expect that Mali will drop some points at home. Sorry, we'll drop some points on the road. It's actually a bit surprising if we turn our attention to Congo that they've maintained a second seeding after their bottom place finishes in 2019 and 2022. To me, they don't seem a second tier team. They seem clearly a third tier team. So they'll have to prove it here. And I wonder if they'll be seeded third in future campaigns if they don't maintain it here. However, it might not be that difficult to maintain it here depending on Gambia's form. Actually, the two did meet in 1998 African Cup qualifying, 1996. I said they hadn't met before, and officially they haven't because Gambia withdrew. But interestingly, they did play twice in that campaign, and they drew twice. So I think that is a bit reflective here in that they seem, on the balance, they seem fairly even. I mean, what it really comes down to is whether Gambia will show the form that they did in 2021. But they rarely do show that form and haven't even shown it in 2022 World Cup qualifying campaign or even in the preliminary round here. But having said that, Congo are not showing much form either. So both Gambia and Congo have a good chance depending on the form of the other. In terms of challenging Mali, though, not likely, although surprises are always possible. We saw that South Sudan have improved slightly. That means getting past preliminary rounds more consistently and improving their records so that they are not whipping boys, but actually showing a bit of competitiveness in the 2021 campaign. Some of the games lost only by 1-goal margins. So it's quite possible they'll take some points at home here and maybe even act as a spoiler to one of the teams above. But it would be a surprise to see them challenge for third place for me. So I'm going to give my overall prediction as Mali. I'm going to pick Congo for second, Gambia third, and South Sudan fourth. Gambia is a bit of a wild card, and that second place is contentious. But all in all, I'm basing my prediction on the feeling that Gambia is a bit of a flash in the plan and a bit of a flash in the pan, and won't be able to maintain that form. So, having said that, let us look at the games and see what's happened so far. So we have Gambia playing South Sudan. So this will test Gambia's consistency to some degree. They would be very disappointed not to win in the home leg, though, and a draw would certainly be a good result for South Sudan. And let us see what happened in that game. That turned out to be a 1-0 win for Gambia, so not terribly convincing, but the result that they wanted, and a good start for Gambia there, and a respectable result for South Sudan on the road, who are kind of measuring their success that way. So all in all, something of a win for both teams there. The second is Mali versus Congo. So Mali is very consistent, and it'll be really important to win this and assert kind of dominance in the group. Congo can be tricky, actually, but even a draw here would be a surprise and a very good result for them. I'm going to say 2-0 Mali here. And the result is 4-0 Mali. Mali scored in the first minute and in the 11th minute. So it was over fairly quickly. El Bilal Toure getting 2 goals. I think his name was on the list. I think he got a red card in the African Cup, but got 2 goals for them here in a 4-0 win. So that puts Mali on top after the first round. Let's see how the next games turned out. It was Congo versus Gambia. So this is a crucial game, actually, I think, in the battle for second place. And as we saw, ELO would favor Gambia, maybe not away, actually, but they saw Gambia as the stronger team. And so if that's true, Gambia could get a draw here or even a win if they maintain their form that they showed in the African Cup. But I don't believe that'll happen. I think Congo is going to win here. So I'm going to say 2-0 Congo. And the result is 1-0 Congo. So never a surprise in Africa for the home team to win at home. It's very hard to overcome that. But a good result for Congo there. And South Sudan versus Mali. Well, as much as it seems like Mali is the far stronger team and has everything in their favor, home advantage in South Africa is very strong. So it'll be a measure of consistency for Mali to win here. And I got to say, I think they will, but I wouldn't be surprised if this was a draw, because that sometimes happens in Africa. But I'm going to say 2-1 Mali here, South Sudan being competitive. And, it was competitive, and I'll tell you why in a second, but it was a 3-1 win for Mali, which is no surprise. However, South Sudan went up on a goal at 29. It was actually an own goal by a Mali player. And it took until the second half for Mali to equalize, and they actually won the game on 2 injury time goals. So at 90+3 and at 90+5. So a very competitive performance there by South Sudan. Mali got what they needed in the end, and that's where things stand. So I'll just finish by telling you the group standings here. We have Mali on top with six points, Congo in second with 3 points, Gambia in third also with 3 points, but Congo is in second based on the head-to-head result. And South Sudan with 0 points, but only -3 in their goal difference after 2 games. So I feel like South Sudan is actually doing quite well here in terms of being competitive. Group H, Ivory Coast, Zambia, Comoros, Lesotho. Currently in the rankings, Ivory Coast, I'll begin with the FIFA and then do the ELO. So in FIFA rankings, Ivory Coast is 53rd, Zambia is 87th, Comoros is 128th, and Lesotho is 164. So clear separation amongst the teams there, and perhaps even more so in the ELO rankings, where Ivory Coast is 45th, Zambia is 98th, Comoros is 138th, and Lesotho is 159th. So the FIFA rankings has a lot bigger separation between Ivory Coast and Zambia, and Zambia, Comoros, and Lesotho are all ranked about 10 points lower in ELO than they are in FIFA, while Ivory Coast is actually ranked 8 points higher in ELO than they are in FIFA. If you've been listening to these podcasts, you'll know that we tend to trust the ELO rankings a little bit more. Okay, and just a note on that, Ivory Coast was as high as 14th in ELO rankings in June 2013 in the midst of their golden generation. And then after that, by 2018, they had dropped down to 62nd. So from 14th down to 62nd, and now back up to 45th, which is kind of reflective of the team history that I gave. Zambia, as you can well imagine, were highly rated, or their highest period was around 2012 when they won that African Cup. They're 98th now, but they were 52nd in ELO rankings at the time and 34th in FIFA rankings. So they have dropped about 50 points since then. Comoros have really come along. They're 138th in ELO rankings, and that is up from 192nd in 2015 and 206, one of the very weakest teams in the world in 2008. So again, probably because of those French I shouldn't say import players because they have to have some connection to Comoros, but most of them are playing and living in France. Finally, Lesotho has also improved. They're also have fallen down. They're 159th now, but they were around 130 in 2018 and in 2020. So they have fallen from them. But in the past, they were always around 160 or lower. So that's the story. Let's look at head-to-head records. And these teams haven't played each other that much. Ivory Coast and Comoros have never met, and nor has Ivory Coast met Lesotho. However, they have met Zambia, and Zambia has a good record of 3 wins, 0 draws, and 0 losses to Ivory Coast. So these are all in Zambia's strong periods, kind of defining their strong periods. In 1974, they won in the group stage of the African Cup. And in 1994, they won in the group stage. And of course, they met in the 2012 African Cup final, where Zambia dramatically won 8-7 on penalties to win the title. So Zambia with the definite edge now, but we would say Ivory Coast looks the stronger team coming into this. Zambia also has a winning record over over Comoros, but that was also from that 2012 campaign where they beat them twice. So not that telling because Zambia has become quite a bit weaker since. And they've met Lesotho 4 times. One was in 1974, a good period where they bested them, winning 6-1 at home and tying away. The other was actually in the 2014 World Cup campaign, which was a weak one for Zambia, but they did manage to best Lesotho, winning 4-0 away and tying on the road. So I don't know how instructive that is, but I think those 2 road ties with Lesotho is instructive, and I think teams will need to be careful when playing in Lesotho. Comoros and Lesotho met in 2018, actually, in the World Cup qualifying round, and they tied home and away. So there again, we see the weakest team, Lesotho, tying. We also get a hint of Comoros generally a bit of a danger at home. There. Okay, now we will just move on to a discussion of what we think, of what I think is going to happen. So, sorry, I just have to prepare something. Prepare the scores. I forgot to prepare the scores, and so when it comes time to look at them, I want to have them available. Okay. Okay, let's take a look at the group. So overall, I'd say Ivory Coast decline since 2015 only means that they're not competing with the top teams as much as they did during their golden generation. They're still heavy favorites to win. Zambia have fallen much more heavily than Ivory Coast, and it would take a real improvement for Zambia to even take second here. I think they're under a bit of threat from below. It seems though like Zambia, their improvement is coming because they're a historically strong team, and I don't think they'll slump for that long. In the surprising form that Comoros showed to reach the 2021 African Cup, they could be a challenge, but there's already evidence that that was a bit of a flash in the pan. I wonder actually, as we were doing Comoros, how many of those French players actually make the trip for Comoros' home games. So I'm guessing that not all of them really gather there, but did gather for the tournament in 2021. Anyway, Lesotho will probably take a couple of points, especially at home, but they're not likely to challenge for second, and even a bit of an uphill battle there for them to overcome Comoros. So yeah, the Lesotho could finish out of bottom if Zambia continues their decline, or if Comoros proves a flash in the pan. A bit closer look, Ivory Coast and Zambia were even actually for much of their history, but we saw that Zambia has the winning record, especially with that 2012 final win in the African Cup, which went to penalties, which does indicate how close it actually was. But Ivory Coast is far ahead in the rankings now, so Zambia would need an abrupt change in form to challenge for first place, and it doesn't seem likely. Actually, more likely for Zambia is a threat from below, although I would say second place seems quite likely. As I said, given their history, this weak period seems like it's not going to continue. And actually, this is a good place for them to kind of improve their form. So their winning records over Comoros and Lesotho. It doesn't mean much since they met each of them in stronger periods, but they are ranked well above them. And it's kind of embarrassing that Zambia hasn't reached the last three African Cups, especially since the last two were expanded editions. At the risk of repeating myself, I gotta say, I think that won't last long. The two recent African Cup campaigns suggest Comoros could challenge for second here, especially if Zambia continues their poor form. But Comoros' own form is not established yet, and it's questionable because they got knocked out in the preliminaries in 2022 World Cup qualifying. So they have met Lesotho once in 2015, as we saw, and they tied home and away. So that in itself suggests it could be an even battle for them, unless Comoros is showing the improved form that they showed in 2021. So we can understand why Lesotho is the pot three team. Sorry, why Comoros is the pot three team and Lesotho is the bottom team. But honestly, in terms of history, they're fairly even. So yeah, it could be an interesting campaign, especially because I think Lesotho is going to be good for a few points, and maybe they will spoil things at the top. So all right, I've done dallying around. I'll give it to you straight. I think it's actually fairly clear for me in this group. Ivory Coast first, Zambia second, Comoros third, and Lesotho fourth. But third place being the most contentious position, I think Lesotho could overcome Comoros. Now, here are the games, and I haven't looked at the results, but we have in the first game, Mauritania. What? Sorry, I have the wrong teams here. Yikes. Okay, I'm just going to do it off the top of my head. Here. So the first game is actually Comoros and Lesotho, and that's actually an important game in the battle for third. I think the home advantage though will prove too much, and Comoros is going to win 2-1. I'll say 2-1. I think Lesotho might be a bit stronger than others expect in this campaign. The other one is Ivory Coast and Zambia. And as much as I kind of hope for Zambia to return to form, I think Ivory Coast is in very good form and they're not going to lose here. On the other hand, Zambia sometimes does surprise away. We saw they're a stronger road team than most. I don't think, though, my prediction is gonna win out over my hope. I will say I hope Zambia ties, but Ivory Coast is going to win 2-0. Now, what happened? We have Comoros winning 2-0 over Lesotho, so that's expected. And we have Ivory Coast winning 3-1 over Zambia. Zambia getting their goal in injury time, so not meaning that much. However, Ivory Coast didn't score until 67 minutes in there. Serge Aurier getting the opener and Paxton Daka scoring for Zambia. All right, the second round of games is Zambia at home to Comoros. Well, I hope their form doesn't plummet to the point that they would drop points here. I don't see it happening really, so I'm going to say 2-0 Zambia, fearful that Comoros might get something out of this, but that's just fear. The other game is Lesotho at Ivory Coast, and to be honest, like these kind of games in Africa do sometimes yield a tie. So I'm not going to predict that here. I think Ivory Coast is going to be consistent and win, but I certainly wouldn't be shocked by a tie because that happens in Africa. But I think Ivory Coast are going to be more consistent. And the result is 2-1 Zambia. Yay, winning on a goal at 88 by Kanwa. Kings Kanwa, I don't actually know him. Mwapu got the first goal in injury time of the first half, the player who plays for Brighton. And Comoros' big scorer, Ben Nabuhane, getting the goal, actually the first goal at 13. So they scored, Zambia tied it up in injury time of the first half and then won it late in the second half. So a less convincing performance than I would have liked. But Ivory Coast did tie scoreless in Lesotho. So again, not a shock in Africa, but honestly a shock anyway. Ivory Coast dropping points there, but we knew Lesotho would pick up a few points at home. We just didn't think it would be against Ivory Coast. So the results there are Ivory Coast nevertheless on top despite the tie in Lesotho, Zambia in second, Comoros in third, and Lesotho in last, much as predicted. And it looks, rather than third place being the contentious one, it looks actually like Zambia and Comoros is a bit more contentious. But Lesotho doing well to pick up a tie in the road, so maybe they'll get back into it. And that is it. Group I, Democratic Republic of Congo, Gabon, Mauritania, Sudan. So we'll begin with the FIFA and ELO rankings. I think you call them ELO. I've gone back to ELO rankings, but you go ahead, Connor.
So Congo, the pot one team, are currently 67th in FIFA and 82nd in ELO. They actually peaked as high as 28th in FIFA in June 2017. But, you know, the 60s is kind of a bit more of an average spot for them. Gabon, the pot two team, is 81st in FIFA and 91st in ELO. So only 9 points behind Congo in the more reliable ELO rankings, despite being the pot two team. Mauritania are 113th in FIFA, 122nd in ELO, and Sudan are not all that far behind, 132nd in FIFA and 132nd in ELO. So just 10 places separate Mauritania and Sudan in the ELO rankings, but both teams there are below 100.
Right, so we tend to favor the ELO rankings in terms of reliability. So just 50 points separating all four teams. I think that's a lot less than most groups.
Yeah, absolutely. I think shows the tightness that we talked about right at the beginning.
Yeah, yeah, just 10 points between Congo and Gabon and 10 points between Mauritania and Sudan. Well, that's interesting. Let's take a look at the head-to-head. Maybe you can kind of give us the general summary, and I'll add whatever details are necessary.
Yeah, so the top two, at least in terms of the pot rankings, Congo, DR, and Gabon have an even record: 2 wins, 4 draws, and 2 losses.
Yeah, and most of those were before 2000, but in 2021, Gabon got the better of them. Gabon won 3-0 at home and tied away. So I would say, in terms of head-to-head, Gabon looking a little better.
Yeah.
Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, Congo, DR versus Mauritania, they've never met, which is actually a bit of a theme we'll see in this group. So nothing to say there. Congo, DR versus Sudan. Congo, DR edges it with 2 wins, 2 draws, and 1 loss. So overall, fairly close.
Right, and almost irrelevant because they haven't met since 1976. They did meet in 2 African Cups there, but and they tied both times. But we can't predict much based on that.
Yeah, and then the other 3 matchups, that's Gabon versus Mauritania, Gabon versus Sudan, and Mauritania versus Sudan. So those three teams there, they've never met in competitive matches. So no head-to-head to speak of.
Wow, that's pretty amazing given the length of Sudan's history.
Yeah.
Okay, but no light or not much light being shed on the head-to-head front. But let's talk about things. You want me to kind of start with an overview?
Yeah, go for it.
I'd say this is a really difficult group to assess. While all of them are kind of deserving of their pot placement, you can kind of understand why they're in the pot they are in. All of them have an argument for reaching the cup, nevertheless. Gabon or Congo DR, as you said, at the top is the top seeded team, and definitely the strongest teams in terms of their history. But they're also the only team not to reach the cup. And in fact, in 2021, they were ousted by Gabon. However, it wasn't a terrible performance, and I don't think it should count against them that much. Anything that you want to say about Congo DR?
Yeah, they're a team you're kind of waiting to become a really big team. I mean, in 2018 and 2022, good World Cup qualifying campaigns kind of show that perhaps they're moving in that direction. But yeah, recent,
Yeah.
Kind of poor African Cup results and failing it the last time kind of leave me kind of not sure what to think about them.
Yeah, I mean, I was kind of excited when they came back to the World Cup, or sorry, to the African Cup, I think in 2015 there, because they were kind of the most fun team in the cup. Um, but yeah, definitely a bit unreliable, I would say, and certainly not guaranteed to win this group.
Yeah, I do see them as a team that can kind of be a pot one team. They're not, certainly they're far off some of the likes of, Algeria and Senegal and some of the top teams in Africa.
Yeah.
But I think they, ultimately, I think they belong and should see themselves kind of as a pot one team. However, they just have to prove it. And, that's getting to African Cups consistently, doing well there. And of course, the World Cup qualification will be a big one for them.
Yeah, what's your feeling about Gabon? 10 points behind in ELO rankings, slightly better head-to-head record, I would say. Do you think Gabon can topple them again?
I think it's possible, and I would go as far as to say that Gabon are the best team in this group right now.
Ooh, how bold.
They've done well in recent cups. They have a good squad of players. They showed their depth too. I mean, people know Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, and he was out, as were some other good players. And they still managed to make it to the round of 16 and only there lost on penalties. I think they're kind of a middling team with middling performances for the most part in recent times, but they're kind of on the upper side of that. And yeah, some good performances in the 2021 Cup and recently. makes me think that it's going to be very competitive at the top of the group.
Yeah, I think you've gone a bit too far there for me, though. I mean, uh, in terms of recent form, I think they might have the edge on Congo DR. I think you know that I tend to think a bit more historically. Both of them finished behind Gambia, we shouldn't fail to recall, in 2021. So it was a bit of a lapse for both of them. I feel that's Congo DR's only recent lapse. So yeah, if they bring that form into this cup, Gabon could win. But I'm not gonna. I wouldn't go as far as to say Gabon would win over them based on just that one campaign.
In terms of the bottom two, I mean, these are both, both teams that are coming off good results, hoping to get into an upswing. Mauritania with more of an argument because they've actually had 3 good African Cup campaigns in a row, the last 2 leading to qualification. So, they can't be written off. Do you see Mauritania with a chance to challenge the top 2?
Yeah, I'm not sure history matters that much in the case of Mauritania. I mean, we see Sudan has a really long history, but it's not really, not really helping their cause much. Mauritania has kind of a a shorter history and a weaker history. But again, history counts a lot for me, and I really kind of feel like their last 2 qualifications, we were careful to say that it wasn't a flash in the pan when we were describing them, but we were also careful to say that it's not like a strong period yesterday, a strong period. I don't know why I said the word yesterday there. It's not an established strong period either. Their World Cup form is poor. So I'm kind of thinking that it's not going to last, without meaning to be cruel, but it kind of came out of nowhere. And I think it's very possible they could look fairly weak here.
Yeah, I think when they have reached the cup, I mean, they were the poorest record of any team in the last African Cup. I think in a cup with 24 teams, which means roughly half of the teams qualified, they're right on the edge of that 24th team. I think they'll get in sometimes, get in not. Might depend on the strength of their group, and I think they've got 2 decently strong teams ahead of them. So I don't see them doing it this time, but they're probably, I think a good period for them would kind of being right on that edge of, making the cup, but maybe not doing much when they're there.
Yeah, and a reasonably strong team behind them. So I think this is a tough group for Mauritania. They don't have kind of any really weak teams here to contend with. Sudan is more, I mean, they're not a strong team, but it's more weak form. Do you see Sudan overtaking them here?
I don't really see them overtaking Mauritania, but it's possible. We saw recently that Sudan has had some very good results at home, especially in their most recent campaign. If Sudan can maintain that strong home form, I don't see them challenging really for the first 2 spots.
No,
but I could see them overtaking Mauritania. If they do well in their home games.
Yeah, I feel so too. I feel that that's going to be a good battle for 3rd place. I mean, it's possible that either these 2 teams, Mauritania and Sudan, could have good campaigns and actually challenge for 2nd, because they've both done that before. But it's not guaranteed. That's kind of a could be an outside chance.
Yeah, and I think it is a point to emphasize. I mean, Congo and Gabon both had a poor qualification run last time, so they're vulnerable. Mauritania and Sudan both show that they can rise to the occasion. So, I think we both talked about a top 2 and bottom 2, but again, I think a point to emphasize is that, this is a group where a surprise, we could see it for sure.
Yeah. Well, I think all of this discussion is really hiding your equivocation, Connor, so give it to me straight. How is this group going to end?
I'm going to say Gabon finishes ahead of Congo DR, narrowly. And then I'm going to put Mauritania just ahead of Sudan in third and fourth.
Okay, so you're saying Congo DR second there.
That's correct.
And yes, I think that's a bold prediction to put Gabon ahead. I'm going to say Congo DR finishes first and Gabon second. In the course of discussion, I'm tempted to put Sudan ahead of Mauritania, but I initially predicted Mauritania. Now I'm equivocating. Okay, well, just to add some spice, I'm going to say Sudan third and Mauritania fourth.
All right.
Yeah, I would say overall I agree with the seeding, but I see the seeding as pretty fragile in this group. And to me, this is probably the most exciting group in qualification because really anything could happen.
Yes, I agree with all that.
All right. Well, yeah.
I was just going to say, there are some results, so why don't we talk about how the group has started?
Yeah, okay. Well, let's make game-by-game predictions. And do you have anything to say about Mauritania versus Sudan? That's the first game.
Well, given I predicted Mauritania to finish ahead of Sudan, I feel I'm obliged to go with them. So I'm going to say 2-0 win for Mauritania.
Okay, and given that I said Sudan's going to finish ahead of Mauritania, I do actually favor Mauritania here. So my logical side says 2-1 Mauritania, but I'm going to be bold and predict a tie.
Right.
Sudan 1-1.
All right. The result of that game was Mauritania 3, Sudan 0.
Oh my goodness! Well, that really gives them a leg up for the third place there.
Yeah.
The next game is Congo DR versus Gabon. What do you think?
I think Gabon are good enough to get a draw. I don't necessarily see it in Congo. I think they can win the group without having to win this game, but I'm going to say a draw 1-1.
Wow. How bold. I'm going to go the other way and say one thing we forgot to mention in the discussion is I think having been ousted by Gambia last time, I think Congo's going to be pretty determined and down to business this time, starting with this game. So I'm going to say a 2-0 win over Gabon.
Neither of us were correct because Gabon pulled off the away win 1-0 over Congo. So big blow for Congo DR to start. Impressive win for Gabon on the road.
Yeah, and I would say, well, you were more right than me, both in predicting a tie, but also in calling Gabon ahead of Congo DR there. So good one. I think you're kind of 2 points up on me now. Now we have the opposite teams playing at home. So we have Gabon at home to Mauritania.
Well, I'm going to say 2-0 Gabon continue a good start.
Given the win in Congo DR, I can't help but agree. I think there's very little chance of Mauritania getting anything away here. I'll go 2-0 also.
The result of this game was scoreless, 0-0.
Oh my goodness, what a surprise. Well, the one thing we did predict was that this group would be one of the more exciting ones, and that's a great result for Mauritania.
Yeah, so that would, just looking at it, that would put Mauritania and Gabon each with a win and a draw atop the group after
right
2
on.
games.
And let's see if Congo can pull themselves out of this, but not an easy task with a win in Sudan. What do you think? Sorry, I'm not saying that they won in Sudan. Yeah. I'm saying winning in Sudan is not an easy task.
Yeah, I think they will pretty much have to after their home loss to Gabon. So I'm going to say Congo comes out determined this time and wins 3-1.
All right. Well, it might sound like I'm contradicting myself because I still think Congo DR could win this group. And as you say, they pretty much need a win here. But Sudan is so tough at home that I'm going to say a 1-1 draw here, even though I'm kind of hoping Congo DR will win.
Well, you were correct that Sudan are strong at home, strong enough to earn victory over Congo DR. 2-1.
2-1?
2-1. So
another ghastly campaign for Congo.
Yeah, so that's Sudan with 3 points just behind the leaders and Congo at the bottom winless after 2 games. What do you make of that?
I got to ask you, do you think Congo DR can pull out of this?
It's going to be difficult. I mean, I think they're going to need. I don't think they can lose another, and I think they need three wins from their next 4 games. I think they can get through with 10 points, but there's no real evidence, perhaps, to show that they're going to turn this around. They still got to go in Gabon, which will be a very tough game for them. Mauritania is strong at home too, so Mauritania has a 4-point advantage now, and that could be enough. The next game, Congo DR versus Mauritania, is the next game to be played. That one is obviously everything on the line.
Is that in Congo DR or in
It is in Congo DR.
Oh, okay, so they should be okay there. But wow, they're really almost running a risk of not even finishing in the top 2 again here.
Yeah. Do you see them getting through?
Well, I'm getting a bit doubtful here. I mean, they had a really good 2022 World Cup qualifying campaign, so I really thought it was just a minor lapse. But this is a really poor start. So, I'd say it's 50-50 right now in terms of getting through.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
Well, living up to expectations so far.
In terms of being a very difficult group to predict. It'll be interesting to see how it turns out.
Yeah.
All right. Well, that brings us to the end of this podcast, which compiled the final discussions and predictions for these 3 qualifying teams. If you want to look more deeply into the teams, you can check out the full podcast on each group on our website at soccerfiles.captivate.fm. That is Soccerfiles with a PH in the middle and an S at the end. Or just type Soccer Files Canada into Google and we'll come up. And stay tuned as we continue on this quick series with the next groups. That's all from Soccer Files Canada for this episode. Goodbye.